Reverend Dennis Baptist, keynote speaker at the Lionel Scott Annual Memorial Lecture. Minister of Finance, Edion, gives PowerPoint presentation to members of Parliament. And in our Black History Month profile, we will feature political activist Miss Leonidas Richardson. Those are the headlines for Tuesday, February the 2nd, 2021. Good evening, viewers. This is SXM Daily News, and I'm Valerie Van Putten. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. And as usual, we have a full newscast for you, so let's get started. In our first story, and as we continue this evening honoring local heroes and heroines for Black History Month, tonight we will feature activist Miss Leonidas Richardson, mother of businessman Mr. Leo Friday, and 9 other siblings. In an excerpt from the House of Nehesi's National Symbols Book of St. Martin, Leonidas Richardson was a political activist and an opinionated leader. She was a longtime fighter for the rights of St. Martiners through her tested alliances with political people such as Jose Lake Sr., Jas Bryant LaBega, Piasco Wilson, Hugh Lopes, and Wallace Peterson. During elections, she organized contact meetings at her home, and at campaign rallies, this grassroots politician fearlessly spoke up against government corruption and victimization. Leonidas Richardson, affectionately known as Baba, encouraged the people to work together for a better St. Martin. She believed in and worked openly and selflessly for democracy and an accountable government, at great risk and suffering to herself and her children. At times, remembered businessman Raphael Friday, Baba and her young children were the only people visible at the Aranya School meeting area for Jose Lake's political speeches. Scores of other people would be hiding behind the lighted area, peering through the dark of night through the windows, listening in silence to Jose Lake Sr. Miss Richardson's downstreet home was a hearth for neighborhood children. Many heeded her advice on the need to be what she called independent in yourself to succeed professionally and as human beings. Miss Richardson and her 10 children were often taunted, called wada wada, and told to get out of town because of her political affiliations. In a posthumous tribute, political leader, the late Van James Jr., recalled Miss Richardson as a giant who was among the first women to be active in politics on this island. She did not, as so many others, chose the safe side. Instead, she chose the side of what she considered to be right, and she fought the fight for justice against the establishment. Leonidas Richardson's legacy is a great inspiration to her family. A number of her sons returned to St. Martin and became businessmen, founding members of political parties, business associations, and public opinion leaders. And now turning to other news, Finance Minister of Parliament met for discussions with CBCS on February the 1st concerning various matters relating to relief by commercial banks. The discussion points were matters relating to the moratoriums given to individuals and businesses by the individual banking institutions, studies and analysis performed by CBCS to determine the viability of the commercial banks in their exercise to assist their clients by providing temporary relief in the form of a moratorium, and discussions that the CBCS has had with the Bankers Association concerning the sustainability of the moratoriums granted thus far and the reason the debt service ratio of 37% is no longer allowed when granting loans. The meeting was requested by MP R. Bryson, MP G.C. Ponteflet, MP C.T. Emmanuel. The Minister of Finance, the Honorable Lionel Edion, gave a PowerPoint presentation and elaborated on his discussion points.
Discussions on the matter relating to the moratoriums given to the individuals and businesses by the individual banking institutions. Any studies or analysis performed by the central bank to determine the viability of the commercial banks in their exercise to assist their clients by providing a temporary relief in the form of a moratorium. Discussions with the central bank has had with the Bankers Association concerning the sustainability of moratoriums granted thus far. And lastly, the reasons the debt service ratio is at 37% is no longer allowed when granting loans. The COVID-19 pandemic led the Central Bank of Curaçao and St. Martin to allow the commercial banks to offer their customers a blanket moratorium for a period of 3 to 6 months in March 2020. With this, the commercial banks were able to offer their customers exemption from paying their principal and interest on their loans for a period of 3 to 6 months. In addition, the commercial banks were also allowed to exceed the total debt service ratio of 37% up to a maximum of 50%. After the first 6 months, a number of commercial banks decided to extend the service for subsequent months. However, this service to customers is not without consequences and risks, which have affected the financial condition of the commercial banks and the financial stability within our jurisdiction. Therefore, in November 2020, the central bank advised the commercial banks to no longer apply the blanket payment moratoriums without taking central bank's minimum regulatory requirements into consideration. The central bank initially allowed the commercial banks to provide payment moratoriums up to 6 months due to the initial impact of COVID-19 and the uncertainties thereof. This created pressure on the commercial banks' liquidity. Considering the adverse medium to long-term prudential impact on commercial banks and the increased risk involved by the reduced liquidity and capital due to the increase of loan provisions, the central bank no longer encouraged further blanket extensions of payments for the moratorium to ensure sound financial stability in our jurisdiction. However, commercial banks were requested to continue supporting their customers on a case-by-case basis after performing a thorough assessment of each customer's financial situation and credit worthiness to determine if further loan moratoriums are necessary. From the top, however, commercial banks were requested to continue supporting their customers on a case-by-case basis after performing a thorough assessment of each other's customers' financial situation and credit worthiness to determine if the further loan moratoriums were necessary. If further loan moratoriums are granted, commercial banks must ensure they remain in compliance with the applicable prudential regulatory framework to ensure adequate loan provisions are taken in compliance with the minimum capital and liquidity requirements, amongst other things. The initial blanket moratoriums created pressures on the commercial bank's income as a consequence of additional provisions that need to be taken on the loan portfolio. This will impact the capital position of individual banks adversely and will lead to a decrease in the liquidity positions of commercial banks by not obtaining loan payments for extended periods. The central bank determined that these adverse developments at commercial banks would lead to continuing pressure on their capital and liquidity position and could even have a contagion effect, which could negatively affect the financial system of the Curaçao and St. Martin. In order to react to these developments, the central bank requested that loan moratoriums should be properly assessed on a case-by-case basis and formally documented. Furthermore, the risk should be adequately managed by each institution, taking their own viability into consideration and to comply with the minimum capital and liquidity requirements of the central bank.
And now turning to other news, Member of Parliament of the Party for Progress, PFP, namely Rayon Peterson and Melissa Gumbs, have sent a letter to the Honourable Minister with Responsibility for Education, Culture, Youth and Sport, Dr. Anders Rodolph Samuel. And in the letter, the MPs outlined their concerns regarding developments at the National Institute for Professional Advancement, NIPA, in Cahill. Speaking to the Voice of St. Martin's News Department, leader of PFP, Member of Parliament, the Honourable Melissa Gumbs, who is also a member of the Education Committee in Parliament, questioned, among others, the reason the director of NEPA, Sergio Blomont, has been removed from the post.
We are requesting updates on all the educational institutions on the island. I think you recall that last week we sent questions to him related to the public schools and the ongoing adjustments being made there for COVID. So online learning, the digital infrastructure. NEPA is no exception, even though as an institution they don't directly fall under the minister. We felt that he would be able to receive answers from the board regarding the topics that we covered. I mean, student enrollment at tertiary educational institutions is always going to be a concern and a crisis. You know, we also would like to know in the future what is happening at USM in terms of student enrollment. So it's just a sort of a general update request going to him, and not to overburden the minister with, you know, a bunch of questions in one letter. We said let's spread it out. So this week we decided to just ask a few questions about NEPA. How is student enrollment going there? How was the financial status of the school? You know, because if there are less students coming in, then there's not enough as much money coming in. So all of these things have to be considered as we continue to go through this pandemic crisis.
What is your general concern as it pertains to NEPA?
That it is functioning well, and that it's functioning under correct leadership, and that there's clarity given to students and the general public as to how the school is managing then during this crisis.
In your letter to the Minister of Education, you also outlined the fact that it has been brought to your attention that the director of NEPA, Mr. Sergio Blomont, is no longer carrying out his function at NEPA. You have taken note of that, I'm sure, or else this will not have been highlighted. Yeah. Can you give us an indication as to your mindset in that the minister knows of Mr. Sergio no longer at NEPA?
Well, our thinking was that earlier in January, they had the opening of the nursing school, and at that event, there's a Facebook Live video in which Mr. Ian McIntosh is introduced as the interim director. So we found that a bit strange, considering I am aware that Blomont has been in the role, at least over the last year. There was no real communication offered up officially from NEPA as to what was happening from a management perspective. So that just, and then of course capping off with the opening of the nursing school, the mention of him not just by NEPA representatives but also in the press that followed thereafter as the interim director. We just wanted some clarity on where Mr. Blomont stands.
Any confirmation, though, as to whether or not Mr. Blomont has been removed from NEPA?
No, nothing has been received as yet. We gave the minister 2 weeks to answer the question. So it's our hope that he does receive those responses from the board. And if need be, maybe in the future we can invite the board to give a general, more detailed update about NEPA itself.
And still to come, Dutch Caribbean Nature Alliance investigating the life cycle and abundance of large migratory sharks in the northeastern Caribbean. I'll have the details to that story and much more when SXM Daily News returns.
Hi, I'm Switch.
And I'm Save.
And together we're here
to tell you about WIB, Switch, and Save Mortgage Offer.
Now at WIB, you can save and benefit from great specials when you decide
to bring your mortgage to WIB.
When you switch, WIB will offer you
payment of penalty fees up to 3 months interest,
payment of notary fees,
waive of bank closing fees,
and also the lowest interest rate.
Plus, you'll have the chance to win back 1 year of interest payment.
Visit any of WIB's mortgage specialists and benefit from WIB's Switch and
Hey, that's my part. And Save Mortgage Offer.
WIB, your partner in progress.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching SXM Daily News, and I'm Valerie Van Putten. And now in news out of the police blotter, The personnel of the traffic department is investigating an accident with minor injuries that took place on February the 1st at about 8:10 p.m. at the intersection of the L.B. Scott Road and the St. Peter Roads. According to the preliminary information received, it appeared that a pedestrian was crossing the St. Peter's Road at the same time that the driver of a black Jeep bearing the license plate MR3, driven by the Minister of Justice, who was coming from the direction of Chic Supermarket and turned left on the St. Peter's Road, with the consequence of the pedestrian being struck at the crossing. The pedestrian suffered minor abrasions to his right arm. He was later taken to the medical center where he was advised to be treated by ambulance personnel, even though his injury was minor. The pedestrian was later brought to the police station in Phillipsburg, where he was checked out by the ambulance personnel. He was later questioned about what took place by the personnel of the traffic department and was then later dropped off at his home. And then on February the 1st, on Sunday, January the 31st, 2021, at around 3:45 p.m., the Central Dispatch received a call from an address in the Little Bay area concerning a man who had passed away after falling from a ladder while at his residence. At the location, the patrol and ambulance personnel encountered the body of a male lying on the floor and giving no signs of life. The personnel of the forensic department and doctors were called to the scene, and it was later concluded that the victim had passed away from the injuries he received after falling from the ladder. The body of the deceased, who was 78 years old, was later transported to one of the local funeral homes. His identity is being withheld by the wishes of the family. On behalf of the St. Martin Police Force and SXM Daily News, we extend our condolences to the family and friends of the deceased. And this other item, the police patrols were also directed to a jewelry store on Front Street on Monday, February the 1st, 2021, at about 12 p.m. for an armed robbery that had just taken place. According to the information gathered on the scene, two men dressed in dark clothing went into the store pretending to be customers. When the two suspects were shown the jewels, both men drew their firearms and robbed the business of the jewelry. After robbing the store, the two suspects fled on foot via the alleyway in the direction of the Sandal School. A search was then carried out in the Phillipsburg area by the patrol, but officers were unable to locate the suspects. The St. Martin Police Force is requesting any information from persons who may have seen or recognized the suspects connected to this investigation. The more the community comes together to assist in the fight against these crimes, the faster the robber or robbers can be apprehended. The Special Unit Robbery can be contacted by phone 542-2222, extension 203, 204, or 205. You can also reach them by the anonymous tip line number 9300, or persons with information can also send a private message via their Facebook page, Police Force of St. Martin - Corps Politie St. Martin. And as we continue now, the Dutch Caribbean Nature Alliance, DCNA, through the support of the World Wildlife Fund for Nature, Netherlands, will be investigating the life cycle and abundance of large migratory sharks in the northeastern Caribbean. Together with DCNA's network organizations, which is the Sabre Conservation Foundation, the St. Martin Nature Foundation, and the St. Eustatius National Parks Foundation, and in collaboration with international conservation organization Beneath the Waves, researchers will research the life cycle of predominantly large predatory and highly migratory species. This project is expected to get underway sometime in April of this year. Director of the Dutch Caribbean Nature Alliance, Tadzio Bervoet, spoke to the Voice of St. Martin's news department.
We actually applied for that funding late 2019 as a follow-up to some of the previous research that we were doing, especially on St. Martin and on Sabre and Statia from, say, 2014 to 2018. We applied to the World Wildlife Fund for assistance in funding to be able to continue that work. So this expedition has been planned. It was supposed to happen last year, but because of COVID, it was postponed to this year. Now that lately there have been quite some issues related to negative human-shark interactions and false news being shared around and people coming up with all types of theories. For example, that there are more sharks because there's more volcanic activity in the region, which is not based on any type of data or evidence whatsoever. We decided to invest a little bit more effort and finances into really researching whether or not there's a change in the life cycle of these very large animals or top-level predators. And we're here talking specifically about tiger sharks. Both the unfortunate incident on Orient Beach as well as the incident in St. Kitts have been attributed to tiger sharks. So that's why we're specifically focusing on these animals. And the idea is to put satellite tracking equipment on them so we can track their movements within the region, and also to check to see whether there's a correlation between the animals giving birth at certain locations during certain times of year. So there will be 2 research trips. So one will happen in April, and then there'll be a larger expedition that we plan on doing at the end of July.
Where exactly will this research be carried out?
Well, because of the incidents happening in the Northeastern Caribbean, we will focus on the Northeastern Caribbean. So off of St. Martin, in between St. Martin and Anguilla, in between St. Martin and Saba, in between St. Martin and Statia. But that will be more the focus for the July trip. We will maintain a more coastal research plan for the April trip because, we won't have the availability of a research trip. We will be using the Marine Park Patrol vessels from the park. So that's why we decided to really split it up. And plus, another benefit of splitting it up is that we would be able to gather more data. So if we only had one trip, we would not be able to gather as much information if we were, as is now planned to have 2 trips. So we're really trying to gather the data to be able to communicate effectively to communities, but also to the decision makers that, there is or there is not an issue related to the shark population, especially in the Northeastern Caribbean, considering what has been happening lately.
And as we continue now with this COVID-19 local update, as of February the 1st, there were 8 persons who tested positive for COVID-19. However, 31 persons have recovered, bringing the total active cases to 144. The total number of confirmed cases is now 1,870. The Collective Prevention Services, CPS, are monitoring 142 people in home isolation. 2 patients remain hospitalized at the St. Martin Medical Center. The total number of deaths due to COVID-19 remains at 27. The number of people recovered since the first case surfaced on St. Martin has increased to 1,699. 252 people are in quarantine based on contact tracing investigations carried out by CPS. The Ministry of Public Health, Social Development and Labor, VSA, the Airport Health Team, in collaboration with the Healthcare Laboratory St. Martin, HCLS, have tested 2,359 travelers arriving at the Princess Juliana International Airport, while CPS tested 13,533 people throughout the community. As the numbers continue to fluctuate here on the island, CPS will continue to actively execute its contact tracing measures. Minister of Health, Richard Pandefleck, urges everyone to follow the mandatory regulations implemented in order to reduce further spread of the virus. For your safety and the safety of your family, you should always wear a mask in public, practice 2-meter social distancing, sanitize and wash your hands frequently, and please be cautious of large gatherings. Now, turning to our weather forecast for February the 2nd, 2021, the Atlantic high pressure ridge will continue to dominate the weather and produce brisk winds across the region. Patches of low-level clouds transported across the local area would account for a few brief passing showers. Long-period northerly swells over the northeastern Caribbean passages and the tropical North Atlantic will start to subside today. Nevertheless, a small craft advisory and a high surf advisory will remain in effect for St. Martin until further notice. Small craft operators and sea bathers should continue to exercise extreme caution. So the outlook through Thursday midday, fair to partly cloudy and breezy with passing showers possible. Now, let's turn to your 3-day forecast. And still to come, Reverend Dennis Baptist, keynote speaker at the Lionel Scott Annual Memorial Lecture. And I'll have the details of that story when SXM Daily News is.
The innovative Banco Matico contactless smart card. Your Banco Matico smart card is now equipped with a contactless feature for payments, so get ready to tap and go. Contactless payments are fast, easy, secure, and accepted worldwide at all Maestro-enabled contactless terminals. Tap for transactions equivalent to or less than 100 NAF, or the US dollar equivalent. You will receive notifications via email anytime you tap. Tap, tap, and pay fast with WIB. For more information, visit our website at wib-bank.net. Tap and go with your partner in progress.
Welcome back, viewers. And as we end this edition of SXM Daily News for this evening, under the theme, Impact of COVID-19 on the Church, the Phillipsburg Mutual Improvement Association, the PMIA, successfully hosted its annual Lionel Scott Memorial Lecture Series. The educational event, which coincides with the birthday of the late L.B. Scott yearly, took place on Thursday, January the 28th, and due to the global COVID-19 pandemic, the 19th edition of this inspiring commemorative program took place in a digital platform. The keynote speaker at this year's event was Reverend Dennis Baptist of the Methodist Church. While addressing the virtual audience, he took a comprehensive look at the impact of the virus on the church as well as churchgoers.
My task tonight is to address the topic, the impact of COVID-19 on the church. Permit me then to begin with a career entitled Alien COVID-19. Oh, why you alien COVID-19? I didn't do anything. Why you put me in quarantine? Now I'm loaded with schoolwork can't done. It's been so long I'm forgetting the existence of fun. I'm busy and still bored. All I do is eat. However, I can catch up on some shows now. That's something neat. Sacrificing one's self just to get food. And everyday reality victims of the same mood. I scroll through Facebook to catch melee all day. But all I see or hear is renegade, that TikTok song. Why you alien COVID-19? You remind me of that traumatizing experience in 2017. You're hurting individuals, finances and economies, families broken, grieving as we say goodbye to many bodies. Irma was strong, but you're comparing yourself to her. You're trying to finish the pot that she had stirred. So let us do what we can, take hygiene measures, and stay clean. This is the first and worst outbreak I've ever seen. I can't wait to see the back of you. Can't wait to say goodbye, you alien COVID-19. In this poem, my daughter captures our human mental state of denial during times of disease and disaster. Such ills don't happen here to someone else or to someplace else.
And with that, viewers, it brings us to the end of this edition of SXM Daily News for this evening. I am Valerie Van Putten, thanking you so much for joining me. And just a reminder that this and other programs are available online. Simply log on to stmartinmediacenter.com for viewing. And on behalf of the SXM Daily News team, we thank you so much for watching and plan on meeting you right back here again tomorrow.